to fashion my dreams and build this winter wonderworld.
Looks like we're talking about the Winter King. Now, the Winter King is an alternate version of Simon Petrikov where he maintained his sanity and mastered the powers of Evergreen's crown. The method in which he managed to do this was through an incredibly powerful spell that reflected all of the madness the crown directed towards him onto Princess Bubblegum. This freed him from his madness while he reaped all of the benefits. This was the case for about 100 years prior to the arrival of Fionna and Cake, and during this time, this version of Simon became far more advanced. Now being able to use his abilities with full clarity, he was able to do almost anything he could think of, such as binding someone who even Prismo was afraid of. Additional powers include, but aren't limited to, recreating living things out of ice, which maintain their own independent identity, as well as being able to pretty much create new creations out of the blue. During his reign, he also became far more scientifically advanced. His scientific and magical capabilities had risen to such a point that as long as he possessed the crown, he was one of the most powerful creatures in all of Ooo. He even had the technology available to duplicate the crown with all of its powers within the span of a mere week. Magic, metal, gems, and all. He could even produce magic items on a whim that had their own unique powers, such as Fiona's enchanted sword, which works like an auto aimbot. With all that being said, there are quite a few noticeable things that deserve discussion. The first and most obvious would be the ice Marceline that we see with the family axe. Now this is interesting because, as we all know, Marceline would never give up that axe willingly, so let's speculate here and figure out what could possibly have happened. Okay, so in order to speculate, we first need to understand the difference between this timeline and the original timeline that we're all used to. So from what we can see, this timeline follows many of the same events of the original timeline up to about 100 years prior. So the mushroom bomb, Billy, oozers, Marceline, and Simon meeting, all of these events most likely still happen with a few differences. One is that Simon and Betty weren't anywhere near as close. In fact, the Winter King actively does not care about her nor think of her fondly, meaning it's possible their relationship ended differently in this timeline or possibly never even functioned the same way at all. Another thing that caught me in a curious mood was Ice Marceline. Here's the thing, there is a popular theory as of late that he killed Marceline because she found out what he was going to do to Bonnie. I personally don't think that's what happened. Look at Ice Marceline. She's still a child. If he were to recreate her, she would most likely be at the adult age that we were all used to, but she's not. I believe that in this timeline, she never managed to reach old age because she died much sooner. In the Winter King song, we even see a possible glimpse of this where Marceline and Simon were attacked by a major group of oozers. I think that this is a throwback to when Marceline got sick and he saved her with the crown's power, but that it played out differently in this timeline, where either the oozers got the drop on them and killed her, she succumbed to her illness, or that Simon accidentally killed her during his brief rampage. Whatever the case, she dies at some point. This event most likely changed Simon's character by a pretty significant degree, causing him to go down a path of nihilism and overall selfishness. This would have made him into an entirely different Ice King than we all know him as, because we do in fact know that the crown's madness twists who you were at heart. A great example of this was Farmworld Finn, who was good at heart and wanted to help people, but the madness of the crown twisted this into an ice-crazed huntsman situation. That being said, remember this spell that allowed Simon to reflect his madness onto Bonnie was made with intention behind it, something the Ice King would not likely do. This means one of three things had to occur. Either he was put into a scenario where he gained his sanity briefly and decided to do something about it, 2, it was an accidental event which the Ice King refused to fix, or 3, Ice King hadn't entirely become Ice King yet. Personally, I think it's partially accidental. As I had mentioned, this version of Ice King would be different than the one we knew due to the death of Marceline as well as various other factors, meaning it's possible he could have become a more stereotypical greedy wizard. But look at the Ice Kingdom on top of this. After he casted the spell on Princess Bubblegum, all of a sudden he gains immense mechanical knowledge that far outpaces anything he knew during his time as Simon, and even with 100 years to learn. Going from what Simon knew to duplicating magic crowns is quite a jump. What if the spell in question wasn't just him removing his madness? What if it was an attempt to link the two in order for him to gain access to Bubblegum's knowledge or merge their aspects, because we know that he was obsessed with her even in this timeline, and as a result he unloaded his madness onto her as well as gaining most of her knowledge. Alternatively, he could have briefly regained his sanity, though that idea is a bit of a dead end. We have no idea what could have caused him to temporarily be free of the crown's influence short of someone like Bella Noche, who yes we know was around within the span of the 1,000 years that Simon was Ice King, but it would still be pretty coincidental for him to be transformed. Not to mention, he would have had to pull something like this spell off within just a few hours to a day because he would have still been a few centuries old at this point. So the only answer that I can think of is that this version of Simon became a more selfish Ice King and attempted to gain Princess Bubblegum's technical knowledge and magic efficiency, and in order to do this composed a spell that blended their attributes, and PB just so happened to get the madness. Unless I'm entirely wrong and the Ice King somehow knew he was insane all along and created this spell for this one purpose. What do you guys think? That's just speculation on my part, and that's all I really got for this episode. So be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and if you got a fun video idea, let me know. Thanks to my patrons on Patreon, you guys are awesome, and as always, I will see you in the next video. Bye.